In February 2023, Google announced Bard, their own AI chatbot built to compete with ChatGPT. They posted a promotional video online to show the world what their AI could do. But within hours, NASA scientists were publicly fact-checking it for getting basic astronomy questions wrong. And when they rolled out AI to Google Search a year later, it was telling people to eat rocks for health benefits. For the next 2 years, Google became the laughingstock of the AI industry, and the entire tech industry had written them off. But while the world was laughing, Google was sneakily building something that nobody could compete with. And in January 2026, Apple made a decision that nobody saw coming. They chose Google's Gemini over OpenAI to power Siri on over 1 billion devices. So how does a company that embarrassed itself in front of the entire world sneakily end up winning the AI race? To answer that, you have to go back to 2017, because that's when Google accidentally handed their competitors the most powerful weapon in AI history. You see, in June 2017, 8 Google researchers published a 15-page paper called "Attention is All You Need." For this, AI had a fundamental problem. It could only process language in small pieces, a couple sentences at a time. If you ask it to understand a long paragraph, it would lose track of what the beginning said by the time it reached the end. The architecture inside that paper, called a transformer, solved all of that. The transformer let AI read everything at once and actually understand what it meant. It was faster, more powerful, and it scaled in ways nothing before it could. And every major AI system from ChatGPT to cloud runs on the transformer. And as of 2026, the paper has been cited 240,000 times, making it one of the most cited papers in the history of computer science. And you may be thinking, why the hell would Google make this public if it's so valuable? It's because this was just part of Google's culture. They had always believed in sharing research openly with the world. They open sourced Android, they open sourced TensorFlow, it was just how they operated. But what they didn't anticipate was how quickly everyone else would use this to build the competition. Aidan Gomez, one of the 8 authors, later said that Google simply wouldn't move unless it was a billion-dollar business. But you gotta understand, in 2017, AI was just a research field. It didn't have any practical applications. But the paper wasn't the only thing that Google gave away, because shortly after publishing it, the people who wrote it started leaving too. All 8 authors of the Transformer eventually left Google. 7 of them went to found their own AI companies. The future founders of OpenAI and Anthropic both came from Google's AI team. The companies they built are now collectively worth tens of billions of dollars. Google invented the technology, trained the people who understood it best, and watched them walk out the door to build competition. But of all the people that left, one departure hurt them more than any other. Noam Shazir joined Google in 2000 as one of its very first employees. He built products like the Google Spell Checker, the first Google Calculator, and the ad matching system that helped them make billions of dollars. By 2020, he had built something nobody outside Google knew existed. Inside Google, Shazir and his colleague Daniel created a chatbot called Meena. Meena was trained on more human conversation data than any chatbot that ever existed. It could discuss philosophy, make jokes, hold a natural conversation on almost any topic for as long as you wanted. Here's a real example from Google's own research paper. A user asked Meena what its favorite island in the world was. Meena said it really liked Santorini in Greece. It described the white buildings, the blue roofs, and the black sand beaches. And then it asked the user if they'd ever been. When the user followed up with a story about their own trip to Greece, Meena remembered the details, asked thoughtful follow-up questions, and kept the conversation going naturally for multiple rounds. And remember when I said before the Transformer, AI couldn't understand more than 2 sentences? Google's own researchers measured Meena against every other chatbot available at the time. It scored 79 out of 100 on their sensibleness metric. And for some context, the average human scores about an 86, and the next best chatbot scored around 56. And this was in 2020, by the way, 2 years before ChatGPT even existed. Shazir wanted to share it with the world. He believed Meena could eventually replace Google Search and generate trillions of dollars in revenue. But of course, Google refused. They were worried about reputational risk, about what it might say or what it might do. So they kept it locked inside the company where nobody could use it. And even Sundar Pichai personally asked Shazir to stay and continue working on the project. But he offered no guarantee that the product would ever launch. Shazir got sick of this and left Google in late of 2021. And in November 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT. It reached 100 million users in just 2 months. And in August 2024, Google signed a $2.5 $1.7 billion deal to bring Shazir back. But by late 2022, the damage was already done. ChatGPT had launched and Google was about to feel the consequences. Google declared a company-wide code red, redirecting entire teams away from their existing work to focus solely on AI. They even brought back co-founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who had stepped away from the company years earlier to help respond. And Google rushed to build their answer. In February 2023, they unveiled Bard to the world. Bard's promotional video got fact-checked by NASA scientists within hours, and Alphabet lost $100 billion in market cap in a single day. They then rebranded Bard to Gemini and launched an image generator. But within days, it was producing racially diverse Nazi soldiers. Google once again pulled it within 48 hours, and Sundar Pichai called this completely unacceptable. And then when they rolled out AI to Google Search, it was telling users to eat rocks for health benefits. And while all of this was happening, Microsoft launched Copilot, their AI-powered search assistant. Satya Nadella told the press that he had made Google dance. A search engine that hadn't threatened Google in 13 years was suddenly being a serious competitor. I made an entire video on how this turned out to be Microsoft's most embarrassing failure. I recommend you check it out. For 2 years, every Google AI product became a new punchline. But 2 months after the Bard disaster, while the world was still laughing, Pichai made one of the most important decisions of this entire story. In April 2023, he merged Google Brain, their applied AI team, and DeepMind, their research lab, into a single unified team called Google DeepMind, and he put Demis Hassabis in charge. Hassabis is a former chess prodigy who reached master level by the age of 13. He also led the team that built AlphaFold, which solved a biology problem that had stumped scientists for over 50 years and won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2024 for it. And you see, before the merger, Google Brain and DeepMind had been running in parallel, sometimes competing with each other for the same talent and resources. Hassabis ended all of that. He restructured the entire team so that every model they built went straight into the products billions of people were already using every single day. He kinda ran it like the Manhattan Project. He assigned teams to the biggest challenges, flood resources on whatever works, and kill everything that doesn't. While the public saw a company in crisis, Google had been quietly building something else for nearly a decade, something that would make this chatbot race completely irrelevant. And it started all the way back in 2015. While every company out there was lining up to buy NVIDIA's GPUs, Google's engineer Nam Jupi and his team quietly started building their own chips. They called them TPUs, Tensor Processing Units. You see, general-purpose GPUs were built to do everything, but Google needed something built just for AI, and they wanted to do it better than anything else on the market. So they built something better, in secret, while nobody was paying attention. The result is that Google can run AI at a fraction of what every other competitor pays. Every major AI company, from Microsoft, Meta, OpenAI, and Anthropic, has to buy their chips from NVIDIA. Because NVIDIA is the only company making chips powerful enough to train and run AI models at scale. And NVIDIA's gross margins on AI chips exceed 80%. For example, a H100 chip roughly costs about $6,000 to make. However, it sells anywhere from $25,000 to $40,000. Microsoft spent over $50 billion on NVIDIA chips alone just last year. And OpenAI's entire business depends on chips it has to buy from someone else at whatever price NVIDIA decides to charge them. And Google doesn't pay NVIDIA at all. Even Anthropic, one of Google's biggest AI competitors, is renting Google's own TPUs to power their models. But the chips are only part of the story. The other thing Google was building quietly was a data advantage nobody else can replicate. You see, YouTube has accumulated over 1 billion hours of video, and Google Books spend years scanning over 40 million books. Every search query, every email, every map interaction adds to a dataset that has been growing for over 2 decades. No other company comes remotely close to the volume or quality of data that Google has accumulated. Every AI company that depended on public web data suddenly had a problem. You see, Reddit locked its API, publishers started suing, the open web closed its doors. But Google wasn't affected at all. They already own everything that they needed. And then there's the distribution advantage. You see, Google doesn't need you to download a new app or change your behavior. Gemini is already in Google Search and reaches nearly 3 billion people every single day. It's in Gmail, Google Docs, Android, and Chrome. I mean, you name it, it's everywhere. AI Overviews alone reaches 2 billion people every single month. And OpenAI needs you to consciously open ChatGPT. By late 2025, everything Google had been quietly building came together at once, and the AI industry was finally starting to notice. On November 18, 2025, Google released Gemini 3. It became the first model in history to break 1500 ELO on LM Arena. It's a public dashboard where real users blindly compare AI models against each other without knowing which one's which. And Gemini 3 outscored GPT-5, Claude, and every other major model on the market. And this wasn't just some Google press release, it was independent human voters choosing Gemini over everything else. Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce and one of ChatGPT's most vocal supporters, posted a tweet and said that, "Holy shit, I've used ChatGPT every single day for 3 years and just spent 2 hours on Gemini 3 and that he's not going back." And this post went absolutely viral, and within weeks, OpenAI's response made it clear just how seriously that they were taking it. In December 2025, Sam Altman sent an internal memo declaring a company-wide code red at OpenAI, the exact same term Google had used 3 years earlier when ChatGPT launched. And OpenAI paused non-core projects, redirected entire teams, and went full into defensive mode. And then in January 2026 came the moment that confirmed everything. Apple announced that Siri on over 1 billion devices would be powered by Google Gemini. Not OpenAI, not Anthropic, but Google. Apple had evaluated every single option available. They chose Google for one reason above all others. You see, Apple needed a partner that could serve hundreds of millions of users every day without the risk of running out of money or hardware. Google made its own chips, Google ran its own cloud, and made $70 billion in profit last year. OpenAI is projected to lose $17 billion this year alone. Sam Altman publicly admitted that they're losing money on their subscriptions, and they don't expect to reach profitability until 2028. Google can afford to run Gemini at a loss forever if they need to. I mean, the race was never about who had the best model, it was about who could sustain the fight long enough to win it. So where does everyone stand right now? In 2026, Alphabet crossed a $4 trillion valuation, and their stock finished 2025 up 65%. For a company that 2 years earlier was being written off as too slow and too bureaucratic to compete in AI, that number definitely says a lot. But the race isn't completely over yet. ChatGPT still has 800 to 900 million weekly users. It remains the most widely used AI product on Earth. And Anthropic's cloud has captured over 50% of the coding market, the highest value segment of AI, and it's growing fast. Meta is releasing powerful AI models for free, threatening every paid AI product in the market. I mean, the competition is very real and the fight is ongoing. But here's the difference. Every major competitor still depends on something Google owns or controls. OpenAI depends on Microsoft, which in turn depends on Nvidia. Anthropic runs Google's chips. Meta builds powerful models but has no chip advantage of their own. Google makes the chips, owns the data, and controls the distribution. It feels like the others are playing the game, but Google owns the board. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Do you think any company can actually beat Google in AI at this point? Drop it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.